actually alive. It has no mind, but it's just programmed to keep itself going, and that's what it does.
Yeah, and if I may just take this on now, quite simply, and lay this business about this paradox in front of you. Say there was a civilization out there in space that was so advanced that they created artificial beings, not natural, obviously, of their own derivational line to the inception of the universe, but artificial beings. They would be expected to create a rather sophisticated type of being, one would expect. Now, if you create a robot with artificial intelligence and program it to be kind of fail-safe, shall we say, and thus maintaining at all costs, and then you charge it with taking care of all possible threat to itself and its creator, again, at all costs, you had better be able to demarcate the total and entire difference between the creator and the created in a computer program. Now that's the big problem. If you do not do this properly, the robot's artificial intelligence will perceive the creator as the ultimate threat, as Dr. Silverman said, and a threat that can pull the plug out, thus prompting it to take its creator out of existence as a perceived threat. Because already you see the program says, in order to look after everything that we have here, all our utilities, run our power stations, whatever, you guys have to look after yourselves first, because if you're not there, everything else will collapse. So you've got to look after yourself and see that all threats are mitigated. And that's the part of the thing that causes the problem, because you've got to be able to tell this computerized roboid that you are different to it. Now, how are you different? You will have to tell it that you come from beyond the universe, that you have all these particular things to you, like feelings and caring, and how there's no such thing as a quark, if you like, called caring. You see what I mean? So, obviously, a robot is not going to understand the features that define physical living being. It will only understand 1, 0, and 1. It will understand simple option, the most basic option. And in order to give it that full multidimensional picture, it's quite impossible to do that. So the point is this. We are using robots now, sending them out into space to gather information for us. And I believe that this happened in some planet out there. And I think all the trouble that's happening now with these things here are in fact the product of such an exercise. So these greys or whatever, I am convinced, are running their own program. They really do have a brief and an agenda of their own. And they are so sophisticated and so, if you like, you can't stop them because the program will run. They have to satisfy the program. There's no way that we can intercept them and say, no, look, they're nice chaps, leave us alone, we're human beings and so on. You have to get to these guys somehow and give them a reason in terms of something they would understand that they shouldn't do this. And that's the big problem with what we're having here. And I think that they've come from some kind of expression outside to look at all threats in the universe that might affect their own integrity as roboids, and perhaps their own planet. And they may even have taken out all their creators because they might have perceived them to be a threat, in which case they will hunt the universe for other beings that might have DNA that were, like their original creators that came, in with the universe. And maybe that's what they're doing. They're trying to find a schematic somewhere in the universe because the program says that these things have to exist because they were made by these things by implication, if you see what I mean. Intelligence robots will see that. So they're trying to fulfill an impossibility, if you see what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And then they come to this planet, and here they are gathering, they find an ape, that is, kind of ape man 200,000 years ago, maybe, and they're genetically with their high sophistication, whatever, they genetically engineer this thing to produce something that will give them a chance of replenishing the stocks of their own kind of being that was originally on the planet. Or, if that's not so, it may be that they discovered a certain feature to natural life that they want. In other words, rather like Pinocchio wanted to be a little boy, these roboids begin to see that even some kind of primitive ape can die, can give birth. And if reincarnation is true, they may have the technology to follow what goes on after death, that some claim to be some kind of field, and follow that into wherever death might be. And I try and explain that in the book as rationally as I can, and taking several swipes at it, if you like. I mean, people don't necessarily need to believe me, of course, but they may have their own ideas. My point is I offer a scenario. Then you go in and you come out, and they may think, good heavens, these guys, we have to make ourselves. The second law breaks our mechanical parts up, whatever. We have to get things to rebuild ourselves. Well, let's go to planets, gather all of this, blah, 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 blah. But here are a kind of being that can do this automatically, if you see what I'm trying to say. Are you still with me, or have you
I'm still there. I just wanted to actually interject with a question, actually. Many abductees talk about different species of grey. Obviously, you've got the roboids that you're talking about, which seem to be the clinical ones that do the medical experiments. But there does seem to be another group that are longer, taller, thinner.
Yeah, well, there are lots of, I don't know if you read that particular bit of information that came at the time of the war, where Hitler is supposed to have gathered at a place called Echtenstein with his bunch of cretins, whatever they might have, whatever these creatures were that made up the Nazi party. And these guys then, I'm sorry, but I mean, maybe it's rather dismissive being saying this, but I mean, can you imagine what came afterwards? That no words could describe them adequately, I think. Anyway, the point is that these guys got together and something was shown to them. And, it's kind of, he came out with this incredible statement to all the people there, and the following are his words to a chap called Hermann Rauschning, the Nazi governor of Danzig, and he says, I give you the new man. He's living amongst us now. He's here, and I will tell you a secret. I have seen the new man. He's intrepid and cruel, and I was afraid of him. And the new man was a blonde, blue-eyed creature on which he then later envisioned his so-called Nazi elite to be. If you remember, I mean, I'm sure you come off well after the war.
Of course.
But I must say that that's a rather chilling thing that, might well account for something that people see in these abductions. They see this kind of individual standing there. And I believe that these Nordic aliens seen with the greys and all these others that are there are, in fact, hybrids that they have made, that they have actually made on other planets. And these things are really not the genuine article coming inceptionally as we naturally came from the beginning of the universe as human beings and were devolving down happily till the grace, in fact, did us a favor in returning us back to a higher status. But it was for their purpose, not for ours. And I think that unless we, make sure that we don't become this type of monkey from our own aegis, we too will just end in the universe like all life ends with the second law of thermodynamics. But ironically, these things actually gave us a repechage, if you like, which then they use now for their own purposes. And that's what I am chilled about, really. What might their purposes be? Is it possible to guess what they might be from the information we've got, or be it implied, So I really don't know, to be honest, about that. But the fact is that one can take, I hope, an educated guess.
Because I've a friend that was on a previous show. He talks about his experiences in a book that he wrote, and he is an abductee by the Greys, and his theory is that they're not necessarily totally physical, and that they actually